it's Izzy here with Vlogmas Day 22. If you're watching this, that means we survived the alien invasion of December 21st, 2020. Today, we are going to be looking at the best books of 2020. I will be doing a worst books as well sometime this week or maybe next month. Who knows? I do a Google sheet. I'm not exactly sure who made it, but I will be doing a separate video on that in the coming weeks. So you'll have all those details then. But they do have a section of favorite reads and least favorite reads. So this is going by each month, what my favorite read was in that month, and then at the very end of the video I'll tell you what my favorite book I read this year was. So in January, my favorite read was Suspicious Minds. This is a book that is in the Stranger Things universe. It takes place in 1969. It may extend further, I don't really remember, but it is about Eleven's mom and the backstory of why she is the way that she is, and it just has a lot to do with MK Ultra, and it has like basically all your 60s stuff in it, Vietnam, all of that. Did not have Woodstock to my knowledge, which is nice, because like I feel like in some books in the 60s they had to put everything that you think of when you think 60s, Woodstock, Vietnam, everything, and I'm like, not everybody, I don't know a single person who was at Woodstock, so like I don't think it's very realistic. But I loved getting just that insight of more into the Stranger Things universe, getting more backstory for some characters that we had met on the show but didn't really know a lot about, and I just think it adds so much more. And there are 2 more books set in the Stranger Things universe currently, and then there's several graphic novels, so I do have all of those on my TBR, and I will get to at some point. And I counted that as, I don't know if it was thriller or fantasy, but it was one of those. So in February, my favorite book was an audiobook, because this book does have a mixed media format, and that is Illuminae by, is it like Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff? I don't know, but I'm putting pictures of the books on the side. I own all these books, but all the books I own are upstairs, and it would just be a lot to bring them all downstairs. So Illuminae is a booktube favorite. It's probably understandable why I really did enjoy this book. It was just like nothing I'd ever read before, and I really liked the setting. It was constantly, I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was nervous, and like you really get put into the book. Like going into a book with mixed media format, you're like, whoa, this is crazy. So I wouldn't do this without the audiobook. I think it'd still be good, but I think you get a whole other experience by reading it with the audiobook, because I just felt like I was right there in that world, and I really cared about what was happening. So in March, my favorite book was Year One. We had the sequel right there. It's by Nora Roberts. So this is a book where a pandemic does happen, and the only people who survive are people who are magical. So they can be fairies, or there's a lot of different kinds, like witches, warlocks, different kinds of magical people do survive. And it really hits big in the cities. It wipes people out there, and there's not a lot of people left. So there's people who are good, there's people who are bad, whoever you may come across in a dystopian thing where America is failing. We see America, but this is like a global thing, I would think, because there's still more to the series, so I don't know exactly all the details yet, but I really did enjoy it, and I highly recommend picking it up, especially in the times we live in. I think it was very fitting. When I had added to my TBR the coronavirus, I knew about it. It was in China and all at the time, but it wasn't here yet that we know of. So reading it in March when everything went down, it was kind of surreal to be reading it thinking this could be what happens here. Maybe without the magic, but just the survival aspects and all that. In April, my favorite book was South Abroad by Pat Conroy. This has been the only Pat Conroy book that I've actually enjoyed. I mean, I feel like all his books are similar, that he uses a lot of the same tropes in at least all the books I've read by him, But in this one, I really liked the characters. I thought they were all realistic. There were no Mary Sues. They were all they weren't perfect. They all had their flaws, and they were just so real. And then with the book taking place, some of it took place in Charleston, and that's an area I'm familiar with. I haven't gone there recently. I haven't been there in a few years, but it is somewhere I'm familiar with, just that southern setting in South Carolina. But the characters, I really enjoyed the characters in this book, and they were the highlight for me. Then in May, I read You by Caroline Kepnes. I really enjoyed this book. I don't know why. I thought going in I would like it because it is a very popular book, but I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I was literally reading so much. I was binge reading because I just wanted to know what was happening. It was so interesting being at the stalker's perspective instead of being at the perspective of the person getting stalked. And I didn't think I would like something that's told in second person point of view, because I hate first person point of view, so I did not know how I'd feel about second, but I had no problem with it really. But it's just so fascinating seeing it through the creepy person's point of view, since we only see it through the victim. We never see it through the other person. I can't think of the word of what they would be called. Just very interesting, and it's a good book for psychological stuff. And then it was very shocking. I did not expect a lot of it. I did very much enjoy it though. So June was another thriller, but this is more of kind of a paranormal. So this is The Sundown Motel. This is a book I was very much shocked by. I had no idea that I would enjoy this book. I was hesitant because, as I said, it does have paranormal elements, and it's something I don't really like to read. It's Christian stuff and all that. I get freaked out. So this book is set in the 80s, and then it's a multi-timeline. We have one part set in the 80s and one part set in our time. I don't remember exactly what year, so I really liked going back and forth. Those are my favorite kind of books. And in the 80s, I love the 80s. I feel like this book it's more of what's scarier, the paranormal in that, or the real people, rapists, murderers, and all that, of who is the scarier one. What do we need to be more afraid of? And I just really liked that element. So in July, my favorite book was a nonfiction, and it was The Dirt by Motley Crue. I've seen this movie 9 times, not sure, so I was like, I need to pick up the book. The book was very interesting, but none of the other books that are in July were that great. With Motley Crue, it's a love-hate relationship with me, but I liked getting to see into that world because it's nothing that I've ever experienced. It's just so out. Not the best rock star memoir, I will say that. But if you do like Motley Crue, you have to read it. And if you're a fan of rock and roll, you have to read it, because I feel like it's probably the most well-known rock and roll memoir. So yeah, read it. And August is another rock and roll book, but this isn't the band telling the story, it's somebody else writing about the band, and that is Into the Black, which is about basically the 90s to 2014 of Metallica's career. And I really liked seeing it from an outsider's perspective of how they acknowledged that time in Metallica's career, of how they became the biggest band in the world and still one of the best-selling bands ever. Just seeing how they made these albums and all of that, and going into a time where rock music isn't the mainstream, how a band has to change and grow and all that. I really enjoyed those elements, and they are one of my favorite bands, so I really liked that. So September was The Third Heiress. This is kind of, again, we had the multi-timeline, and I really like that this timeline was 100-year difference. We have part of it set in Victorian times and the other part set in the 90s, the 1990s, not the 1890s. So it's it's a mystery, and finding out a mystery that happened so long ago, and just all the hurdles that Kate's one of the main characters, so that Kate and her counterpart in the 1990s have to go through to get to finding out what this crime was. And again, if you're somebody who likes ancestry and genealogy, I think you would like this book as well, because for me personally, I'm always going through trying to find out stuff about my past ancestors, and that's kind of what was happening in this book. So I really liked it. So October was another nonfiction, and that is Pirate Women. This book tells all about female pirates, because you only see male pirates. You never really get a perspective of female pirates. And again, I didn't really know anything. I mean, I don't know a lot about pirates in general. So just going in and reading about all these females who, a lot of this was to get revenge, or maybe they didn't have a good at-home situation, so they went out to sail the seven seas. And or some who loved their country and wanted to serve in the military, but women weren't accepted in the military in those times. And then it goes from basically the early Greek times all the way to modern day of basically smuggling people out of communist countries to get them to a free country. It's very, very interesting to see and how it's evolved, but kind of stayed the same for thousands of years. And again, from a female perspective, I loved seeing that. And the writer was obviously female. And then a lot of the sources she used were female sources. So if you're a feminist, which I hope all of you are, you would very much enjoy this. November was Wicked Fox by Kat Chow. I really enjoyed this. It's YA fantasy again. It's something that's a hit or miss for me. And this book was set in South Korea. I had never read a book set in South Korea. So I loved getting to learn about the Korean culture and being put in Seoul, because that's somewhere where I do want to travel to, but I just didn't know much about. So I loved getting to see that and learn about the Korean mythology. This book doesn't just focus on the Gamiho, but different kinds of other mythology in Korea. And so that was stuff I had never known about before. So reading that, anytime I read something, I'm always researching it as well. So just getting to research about the Korean traditions and all that, I really enjoyed. And I cannot wait to pick up the companion novel to this book. So in December, I've only finished one book, and then I'm in the middle of a book right now, but Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin would be my favorite, because it's the only one I finished, but I think it's going to be my favorite anyway. I'm reading maybe 2 or 3 more books in December, but it is the backstory of the Targaryen dynasty. It did drag in parts, but it's getting, like the Stranger Things book, it's getting more backstory to our main story, and I just love getting that backstory. But those were all my favorite reads for 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. Bye, guys!